Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Lead Podcast, where our intention is to support the development of future hospitality industry leaders. This is part 2 of our interview series with Greg Creed. I'm really excited now to jump into a conversation around inspiring others to fuel results. For all those that watch part 1, there were so many valuable takeaways, practical pieces that you can think about as a leader, but also actions you can take with your team. We look forward to continuing that. So get your notepads out. Let's have a great conversation. Kim, great to see you again.
Yes, thank you so much. I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Greg Creed, former CEO of Yum Brands, mentor, friend, all of the above. I'm super honored to have him here today. He has done phenomenal things for all of the brands he's worked at, leveraged partnerships to make sure that you are, obviously scaling and making team members valuable there. The app's author of Red, you guys can go get this. And today the focus is really on inspiring others. And Greg, you've done that for so many people. I call you a mentor, but I know many other people do as well. Um, I guess what would you say that you focus on in a give back and why you feel that,
Yeah.
you're kind of contributing to others people's success?
Well, it's first of all, it's great to be here, and it's interesting because when I ran Taco Bell and when I ran Yum, we spent some time. We had, as you can imagine, we're in I think 140 countries and with multiple brands and all that sort of stuff. And so we spent some time looking at, where did we perform really well and where did we perform okay and where did we sort of not perform so well. And it was really interesting that what it came down to, this is crazy that you could take all this, and what it really came down to is we performed our best, and the businesses performed their best when the leaders were inspiring, when they were basically inspiring leaders. And the first thing I want to say is, because this was the first thing that came up, which was all the introverts were like, "Oh my God, he's going to turn me into an extrovert." Like, I don't want to be an extrovert. And because I am an extrovert, everyone's like, "Oh, well, Greg's just found the secret to his success." So the first thing I want to say to everybody is, no, if you're an introvert, like I said in the other episode, you got to bring your true best self to work. So if you're an introvert, this is not about you not being an introvert. And if you're an extrovert, this is probably makes you happy, but this is not about trying to change anybody, because nothing is about changing anyone. Everything's about, as I said, bringing your best self to work, right? But what we did find was that inspirational leadership, or inspiring others, you can actually be taught to be more inspiring. And so what I love is, if there are certain things innately in us that no matter how much like, I am the world's worst speller. Okay. I mean, I'm just be honest. I literally, in the spelling bees when I was at school, I didn't even stand up because the teacher said, "Look, Greg, just sit down because you're going to be sitting down they probably don't do spelling bees anymore, but you know what I mean."
I was just gonna say, do they still have those?
No, that's just showing. I mean, we
They
also
have autocorrect now and
we learned
AI.
to write cursive. No one knows what cursive is, but anyway, we should move on. Anyway, so well, what we found is that you can actually teach people to be more inspiring. And I'm not talking about inspiring leaders at the top of the organization. I'm saying anyone who leads can be a more inspiring leader. So the first thing I want you, well, two things. A, everyone can be more inspiring. It doesn't mean I'm going to make you the most inspirational person on the planet. And secondly, if you're an introvert, I'm not trying to make you an extrovert. So we learned that there are 5 characteristics that inspiring leaders do. So I'm going to share with you, if you don't mind, it's a bit of a long answer, those 5 things. And then we can unpack those as much as you like. So the inspiring leaders demonstrate these 5 things. First of all, they set a clear vision and they share the why. So not just the what and the how, but they share the why. The second thing is they communicate powerfully, and they spend a lot of time making sure that their message sticks. And we can talk about how to do that. And in fact, one of the most important things I think in leadership is being a great storyteller. So maybe we can unpack even what does it mean to be a great storyteller. The third thing is they collaborate authentically, which is that they choose a mindset. Inspiring leaders choose a mindset that we are more successful when we collaborate and we are mutually aligned than when I'm just off doing my own thing. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing is they foster innovation. And a lot of people go, "Oh my God, I'm not very innovative. I'm not very creative." this is about fostering innovation, not being necessarily the innovator. And there are people who are innovators. I'll tell a quick story. Crunch Wrap, which I get a lot of credit for, was invented by a lady called Lois Carson. And Lois Carson was a really good mid-level manager in the food innovation team at Taco Bell. And she calls me up one day and she says, "Hey, Greg, can you come down? I'd like you to show you a product." So I literally go down and she shows me this product, which is essentially a Crunch Wrap. And I go, "Oh my goodness, did you have this idea driving to work this morning or in the shower this morning?" She goes, "No, you're the 5th chief marketing officer I showed it to." And so my role in fostering innovation in that case was to champion her idea. So when I say foster innovation, I don't mean the people who aren't creative have to go off and go, "Oh my, Greg's telling us all to be creative." Sometimes what you've got is positional power that you can champion other people's innovation. And that's what I mean by fostering innovation, or just creating a culture like we talked about in the first episode about creating a culture where new ideas are freely available. Anyone can have them. One of my other favorite stories is we were sitting around one day at Taco Bell saying, "Well, what is it that we like to eat that we'd like to drink?" And remember, we're a bit of a frat house. So the answer was candy. And so we reached out to Starburst, Mars own Starburst, and said, "Hey, we'd like to make a Starburst drink." And their response was, "We don't make drinks." We're like, "We know you don't make drinks, but we'd like to make a Starburst drink." And ultimately, we came up with the pink Starburst Freeze. And it was the first product we ever launched only with social media, and we sold 3 times the volume we expected to sell because we just asked a very simple question: what is it that we like to eat, that we'd like to drink? And so being a catalyst of ideas, creating cultures in which any idea is open, and also creating a culture in which because people actually said to me, "Well, why did Lois Carson phone you? You're the chief marketing officer." I'm like, "Well, why wouldn't she phone me?" And I think in a lot of organizations, there's hierarchy and I don't want to jump through 5 bosses and get into trouble. Lois started really comfortable. "Hey, great. You want to come down and see this product?" Anyway, so that's the 4th one. And the 5th one is develop people. So the 5 things are: set a clear vision, sharing the why, communicate powerfully, making your message stick. And maybe we can talk about, the elements of being a great storyteller. Collaborate authentically. So choosing a mindset for mutual gain, not for individual gain, but mutual gain. Fostering innovation. So being the catalyst of ideas or the champion of ideas, or creating a culture in which ideas come about, and then developing people. So we can unpack those. The one I like to tell, and then you can ask me whatever, is about what does it take to be a great storyteller?
Yeah.
And I think the insight to being a great storyteller is the following things. First of all, if you can mine your own life experiences, you can tell a story that's sort of fiction, but if you can tell a story that you've lived or it's part of your life experiences. So the first one is mine your own life experiences. The second one is really, really important. Do not make yourself the hero of the story. So you'll notice the story I just told about Crunchwrap is the story that Lois Carson is the hero. I played a secondary role, but if I'd have just told a story and go, "Oh yeah, Kim said, she loves Crunchwrap. Yeah, I'm Greg Creed. I invented Crunchwrap." Then that's not a great storytelling because I'm not the hero of that story. And when you can tell stories where other people is the hero, that's also goes back to, we talked about the customer experience and the team member experience, like recognizing other people for being the hero is so powerful. The third one is where possible, highlight a struggle. Well, even again, use the crunch wrap. Lois had spoken to 5 other chief marketing officers and no one had ever followed up on her idea. So, the struggle was she could have just easily given up on me, but she didn't. So after 4 rejections, she still had this gut, the grit to bring that idea forward. The 4th thing is keep it simple. If you're going to tell stories, you got to sell really simple stories. And I like to tell this one as a bit of a joke, which is if I said to everybody, what is Pythagoras' theorem? Some people will know it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You can't do this with a bunch of engineers because they all know the answer, but most of us don't know the answer. But the point I'm going to make is, and I may say to you, okay, if I say to you Humpty Dumpty, if I say to you, all of you, Humpty Dumpty, what do you say?
Sat on a wall.
Sat on a wall or fell off a wall, right? So Humpty Dumpty either sat on a wall or fell off a wall. But here's what's interesting. When we learned the story of Humpty Dumpty, we couldn't read and we couldn't write, yet we remember the story.
Yeah.
Pythagoras' theorem, we could read and we could write, but we don't remember Pythagoras' theorem because Pythagoras' theorem is facts and Humpty Dumpty is a story. And so this is why it's so. And then the last one is practice makes perfect, which is if you're going to be in a situation where you're going to tell a story, practice telling the story. Now, for some people, it's innate and they're very comfortable. I'll share Tracy Skeens, who was my chief human resource officer, amazing woman, incredibly talented. She was not comfortable in getting up in front of large audiences and inspiring them. And so she basically practiced and made it perfect. Now, the people who, and Kim, you would have heard her speak and others would have heard her speak. She always came across as natural and authentic and genuine and wonderful, but she had to practice. I'm not a practicer. Okay. So again, it's like, what is right for you? So anyway, just in summary, how do you be a great storyteller? Mind your own life experiences. Don't make yourself the hero. Highlight a struggle. Keep it simple. And practice makes perfect.
Love it.
But again, we can talk about any of the others as well. I mean, it's so if you want to talk about other ones of the set a clear vision or collaborate authentically, I'm happy to talk about it. But I think people underestimate the importance of storytelling. And I would argue the more senior you become in an organization. So I know there's a lot of junior people starting out in their careers. I think the better you can become at telling stories that sort of meet all of that criteria, I think the more successful you will be in your career, because people latch onto these stories. And I think if you follow them about, as I said, personal struggles and all the things that I just spoke about. So, I think being a great storyteller and becoming a great storyteller, which you can practice, is critically important. So, those things are all important. I think the one other thing, and you can ask about the question, but one other thing I'd like to leave is I often get asked the question, what are the characteristics of a great leader? What makes a great leader? And for me, they were the following: smart, heart, and courage. And smart is, yes, it's IQ.
That's the name of your next book.
Yeah, that's my next book. Yeah. So smart is IQ and EQ. Heart is, do you have a heart for the business you're in? Do you love doing what you're doing? And do you have a genuine heart for people? And then courage, it was really funny. I was always hard to describe courage, but I was at a conference and courage was described as knowledge plus conviction plus action. So that is, thinking, believing, and doing. And I think there are two things. One, we tend to get consumed by IQ, particularly as parents, or our parents got consumed by our IQ, like what were our grades and all that sort of thing. I've seen no correlation between, high school grades and success in life. Trust me, there's a correlation I've not seen it. I think a lot of people are smart. I think a lot of people have heart. I think what defines the great leaders, and I don't think it matters whether you're the CEO of an organization or you are running a shift. I think that's leadership. They are both leadership. I think it's courage. And I think within the courage description, as we said, I think a lot of people have knowledge. A lot of people have conviction. What a lot of people struggle with is action. And so what I would encourage everybody to do, which is to act. And I had another little saying, which is we won't always be right, but we always have to be clear. And I think what happens sometimes is people feel they can only make right decisions, right? That, have to make the right decision. But if you don't make any decision, chaos ensues, because you could have, let's assume I'm leading a group of 10 people and I don't make a decision. Well, those 10 people are going to come to work. They're going to do something and they're probably going to go in 10 different directions. Now, if I'm their leader and but let's assume I make the wrong decision, but I've got 10 of us all going in the one direction. And then we realize you know what, that's not the right direction. Well, I can course correct and take 10 people in a new direction. If I'm 10 all over the place, then I've got to be an Australian sheepdog to try and herd everybody in the right place. And so it's interesting. I used to love going to meetings, and you'd sit in the meeting and people would go, oh, we'll make the decision next week. And I'd be like, well, why aren't we making the decision now? Like, what information are we going to get in the next 7 days that's going to change the decision? And the answer is usually nothing, right? And so I would go, well, I'm just going to go out here, lock the door, and you're not leaving until you've made a decision. And so I think
Illegal today.
it's probably illegal. That is probably illegal. Yes.
Probably got a lot done, though.
But you get a lot done, while it's illegal, you're getting a lot done. But I think
Fine line.
the fine line. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that it's important to make decisions. And if you're a leader, that's your job. Your job is to create culture, inspire others, and make decisions. And I think and those are all the things that if you think about that we've spoken over the 2 episodes, the thing that most I've seen, because I've been around for too long, is the fact that some people just can't pull the trigger. They just can't make the decision. And to be honest, no one wants to work for someone who can't make a decision either. And so again, it's funny, I've seen the most wickedly smart people not be great leaders. In fact, I think, we were sort of, when we were born, we were given IQ and EQ, and, somehow there's a balance, right? And some of it's balanced and some is this way and some is that way. But I think this emotional connection, I think having a genuine heart for people where they recognize you care about them, going back to, caring about the team member experience. But I think this idea of having courage, and I think this idea of acting is what truly distinguishes the okay leaders from the truly great leaders. And it doesn't matter whether you're leading a shift or whether you're leading a Fortune 200 company. I think the lessons apply. And that's the great thing about leadership, which is, I love it. Mike Grams, who started out, I think, as an assistant manager at Taco Bell, ended up being the chief operating officer, then the president of Taco Bell, and now I think he's the chief operating officer of Starbucks. And I don't think, I've known Mike 25 years. Mike's as genuine and as real as he is today that when I first met him. And his leadership style, which obviously worked well for him as an assistant manager, is now working incredibly well for him as the COO of Starbucks. And so I want everybody, particularly the younger people, the skills that you're learning and the things and the trade that you're practicing, whether you're an individual contributor today or you're leading 2 people tomorrow or 5 people or 10 people, or I think we had 1.5 million people go to Yum at one stage. It doesn't matter. The principles are the same. And I think the point I want to make to everybody is you can learn, and most of these skills are learnable. Yeah, the only thing you can't change is your IQ. What I've been told, I'm not a psychologist, the only thing in all of those things that you can't change is your IQ. What you were born with is sort of your IQ. You can change your EQ. You can change how you think about people. You can change about your courage, your conviction. You can change all of those things. So a lot of what we need to be successful is in our control. And the question is, do we want to do the things we need to do in order to be a leader? And by the way, success is not defined by, trust me, running a Fortune 500 company. My favorite thing at my retirement party was my daughter, who said, Dad, you're now a PIP. Well, this will be interesting. She goes, yes, you're a previously important person. And so you may be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but to your daughter, you were a previously important person. So, you can't get too big a head no matter what sort of job you end up doing. But anyway.
That's awesome. Greg, I know we're closing up on time. I want to ask one question.
Yeah.
When you hit on the courage, there's a lot of emerging leaders that I still hear when I'm talking to them, or any of us are talking to them, because we've discussed this. I know Kelly and Matt and I have, around them thinking that they should get the job without doing the work to get the job these days. It's a little bit different culture shift out there. And
Yeah.
we're trying to help these emerging leaders understand that they own their development.
Yep.
Their supervisors doesn't own it. The peer group doesn't own it. They have to drive it. And I think that piece around courage and having the the opportunity at times or the will or the skill to like speak up about it,
Yep.
ask what they need, be a learner, ask a lot of questions. What are your thoughts around that? Because some of us have worked with really great leaders throughout our careers,
Yep.
and been lucky. Some haven't, but it's not on the leader to actually get you there. It's really on you. So I'm
Yeah.
curious.
I mean, it's a great question because ultimately you're responsible for your own success or lack of success. I honestly believe that. Because look, literally in the 42 years I worked, I had great leaders and horrible leaders. I had good leaders, bad leaders, just people I liked, people I didn't like. So you are ultimately responsible. You're ultimately responsible for like the attitude you bring to work. Um, there was a saying which is, there's only two things that matter in life, the decisions we make and the company we keep. And I think that's really powerful, right? So, even choosing the company you keep, I love it when people say, oh, he or she fell into the wrong crowd. No, no one falls into the wrong crowd. That's a decision you make, right? And decisions have consequences. And the great thing about the business we're in, our decisions usually are not life and death. I mean, I jokingly used to say, we're sort of selling tacos. We're not curing cancer. Now, there are a lot of decisions like I'm on the board of Delta Airlines. Those pilots have 300 people's lives in their hands and surgeons have people's lives in their hands. So at the end of the day, we also have to understand we're in the hospitality business. And I think so, again, the decisions that we make, then usually not life and death decisions that we're making. And so, making the decision, being responsible for our own personal development. I'll give you a good example. I was at a meeting at Yum once. There was like 20 people in the meeting, and there was a guy called Graham Allen, and Graham had just done this acquisition of a chicken business in Russia for us to acquire. And I came out of the meeting and I said to David Novak, I think I'm a pretty creative guy, but I'm not creative in the financial area. I would never have thought about how to do that deal that Graham just presented to us. And so I said to him, can I do something? So I went off to Stanford University for like a 10-day course. I called it the finance course for marketing dummies. But I recognized that someone had a skill set that I was going to need to have in order to be an even better leader. And so to your point, I encourage people to say, hey, you know what? I may be good at this, but I'm not good at that, or I may understand this, but I'd like to understand that. Because ultimately you are totally, you are responsible. There's all these economic factors and there's all this stuff going on around you. But you are responsible for what attitude do I come to work with? How do I want to lead? Do I want to lead with heart or do I not? And then identifying your own opportunities for improvement. And in this case, mine was I was creative in the brand building marketing area, but I was not creative in the sort of what I call financing part of the business, just not my background. And I went to my boss and I no, was I ever going to be as good as Graham Allen? No, because that was his expertise. But I felt a heck of a lot more comfortable. And funnily enough, many years later, I ended up spinning off the China business of Yarn, which again, not sure whether that I would have even thought about it if I had have not, when I saw Graham do the acquisition in Russia, had said to my boss, David Novak, I need to learn this skill. I'm not sure that opportunity would have come into my head. So we are all ultimately responsible, but it's also usually not life and death. And so, being open to learning and getting feedback and encouraging others and recognizing all of these things are critically important to success.
Kelly or Kim, any questions to close out this incredible episode?
Nope. I appreciate you very much for coming on, Greg. Thank you so much. You have a wealth of knowledge that everyone can gain from while being inspired while listening. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. You're a gift to the industry for sure, and you give back. And I know Karen Stutz always says she's in her earning years, and then she has her give back years. And right now, I think you're doing that as well, along with just a few others that actually take the time. So, thanks for the investment and the emerging leaders and hanging out on the Lead podcast. Kelly's going to close us up with some fun details of our next events. What you got, Grogan?
I'm gonna say I hope you come join us in Chicago. We've got our third annual Sizzle and Spin event. Is that right?
Nizzle and spin and yazzle and yoga
Yazzle and yoga.
fundraiser. It's a fundraiser.
a fundraiser. It's going to be an absolute blast. Come join some of the amazing leaders in the industry. May 17th on the coattails of the National Restaurant Show in Chicago. And then come join us in Dallas, June 11th. We are going to have a room full of amazing speakers, amazing networking, and you will get to just do this all in person. And so I'll let you imagine how incredible that will be with the hours that we'll get to spend together. So definitely come check us out. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us the podcast. And Greg, this was amazing. Thanks for sharing your time with us.
My absolute pleasure. I had a ball. I really did. And I just want to encourage everyone, take responsibility for your own destiny.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, guys.